you've heard me say that the issue isn't so much race, the issue is more so class. It is true that there are racial differences from the standpoint of the experiences that people have. And it's also true that from a racial standpoint, just from the history of the country itself and the perpetuation just from year after year after year or century after century, that there are some groups that have, let's say, higher distributions of wealth than other groups. So you would never hear me say that there are no differences on these fronts. I just try to make the point that class is the primary issue. Human rights is the primary issue. If you're looking to build a coalition in order to get something accomplished, this focus on identity that breaks up people is not necessarily the way that's going to get you over the finish line, as opposed to focusing on something that affects the majority or the overwhelming majority of the population. It is true that there are some people in this country that are racist. It is true that there are some people in this country that are sexist, but I don't believe that's the majority. And not just not believing that's the majority, even within those people still may sign on to your cause, if signing on to your cause meaning something that they themselves also care about, meaning self-interest. No, I don't think Republicans are all that empathetic. Yes, I do think they care about their own self-interest. I think that you get a large section of people, the majority care about Medicare, the majority care about campaign finance or corruption within the political space, the majority cares about their kids going to school affordability-wise. And I would argue that the majority even care about getting more money in their paycheck, getting more agency in their jobs, being less vulnerable in the way they go about their life. I think those things are shared interests. I don't need all, I just want majority, and I want a majority from the standpoint of a coalition that wants to actually get shit done. That's what I want. Now, I say that to say that if you're a cook, if you're a baker, if you're a haberdasher, if you're the person who's working at all, you should have a decent fucking life. Not necessarily struggle and scrimp by being consistently vulnerable. That means, yes, we should come together as a society to make sure people have access to healthcare. No, 95% of the wealth should not go to the top 1%. I don't care if that's under Obama. I don't care if that's under Trump. And I find that to be an utter failure within a society itself. We have massive income inequality in this country that's only getting worse. It is at record levels. And within that, tax cut. Because that's exactly what's needed at this particular time. And even the last guy gave, after Bush grotesque tax cuts, gave 83% of that, instantiated 83% of that into our laws. Those tax cuts, yes, may put a few more dollars in your pocket, but think of the things you're not getting. Just because you're getting a few more dollars in your pocket doesn't necessarily mean that your expenses aren't going up. The amount of money that we spend on healthcare continues to go up. The utopian idea of Obamacare, as opposed to a single payer or a public option that would have dramatically cut costs from the standpoint of healthcare. If you're going to do healthcare, do healthcare. My point is this. Whoever you're going to choose, whether it's a political space, they should represent your interests. They should not be corporate stooges. They should not be people who are just parroting feel your pain language and bullshitting you while simultaneously just have a hand in their back, putting forth ideas of their corporate overlords that are putting money in their pocket. Enter one Deval Patrick. Deval Patrick will likely be running in the primary, in the Democratic primary, and it will be a full Democratic primary of a lot of corporate stooges who are running and parroting certain things, be it identity tropes or be it fake progressivism. His is probably going to be a combination of those two. The truth of the matter is, Deval Patrick, even though he might have worked as a civil rights attorney, has seemingly just been a confidence guy, or a guy that's working in order to change the image of bad companies or bad actors. Take a look at this. This story comes out in Huffington Post, and it is a good one. And it's long, so I'm going to put it in, but I'm going to give the basics of it. Deval Patrick meets a gentleman in 1996 when he was head of the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, named a billionaire, Roland Arnold. Now, Roland Arnold was they were investigating a company for civil rights discrimination within subprime mortgages. Now, this resolved to a slap on the wrist. And the reason Deval Patrick gave him a slap on the wrist is because they didn't want to stop the industry of subprime industry. Oh, hindsight is 2020, ain't it? Now, when Arnold came up for ambassadorship, which he did because Arnold gave Bush a bunch of money, and that's another thing. Corruption, whether it's under Obama, whether it's under Trump, whether it was under Bush, red flag. The idea that you're giving somebody money and they take that money, and because you gave them a bunch of money, they put you on an ambassadorship, that should be nonsense. The ambassadorship should be filled with people who know what the fuck they're doing, not people who just gave you a ton of money. Donald Trump was putting people in positions of authority based on the money that he was given. Betsy DeVos, for example, no qualifications at all at that particular job. She's an ideologue from the standpoint of charter schools and destroying the Department of Education with her, her basis on this. That should never happen. I mean, that is corruption at a breathtaking level. And it's something that takes place in both parties. And it's amazing to me that people look at this and be like, nothing to see here, folks. Perfectly normal. I don't give a shit if it's normal. It's wrong. The point of government is to do things for civic reasons, not to do things because somebody gave you a ton of money. That's utter nonsense. There should be a bar on the door from the standpoint of getting money and doing favors in the political space, and it should be prosecuted ferociously and viciously. I'm just saying, I don't care what party it's associated with. I care that it's taking place, period, full stop. But that's it. That's a detour, I'm sorry. So Arnold, Deval Patrick gives them a slap on the wrist. Now, when Arnold creates Ameriquest, now, when he's put up for an ambassadorship, Deval Patrick writes a letter to the, Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He's heaping praise on this billionaire after having defined this billionaire for trespassing on civil rights issues. And Deval Patrick says that Arnold was a good man and that he stepped forward after the settlement in 1990 and he used this experience to make a better company. The New York Times simultaneously described Ameriquest as a worse bottom feeder of all the subprime mortgage companies. Interesting enough, Deval Patrick goes to work for Ameriquest. That's interesting, right? And going to work for Ameriquest, he gives them, let's say, a facelift. Just like Colin Powell working for the Bush administration. Hey, looks like an honest man. 70% of the public believed in Colin Powell. They thought he was a trustworthy guy. So this body of crooks and war criminals that have been established in the Bush administration gets somewhat of a facelift by rubbing itself into Colin Powell. Same thing was true for Deval Patrick. Because he worked as a civil rights attorney, him going to work for the company tried to clean up the image of the company just by virtue of him working for the company. The issue is not race, the issue is class. I keep making that point. They describe it this way. Ameriquest's business model was to use high-pressure sales taxes to push homeowners with existing mortgages into new loans with sky-high interest rates. They were good capitalists. How can we get people in exploitive relationships? Because exploitive relationships are the best. If the family couldn't pay, investors who bought the loans would acquire the house through foreclosure. When home prices were soaring during the housing bubble, it was a tremendously profitable strategy, turning Arnold into a billionaire. Deval Patrick said, this is a good man. This is a good man. That billionaire is a good man. Now, here's another thing. This company was predatory on minorities. Again, the issue is not race, the issue is class. Nearly all of Ameriquest loans issued from 2003 to 2005 were refinancings using a high-pressure tactic. According to the data from the University of Wisconsin, half of them were made to households making less than $50,000 a year, with more than a third going to inner city neighborhoods, covering the federal government's Community Development Block Grant Program. In Detroit, the company was responsible for over 2,500 foreclosures, 70% of them in homes with blighted or abandoned in 2015, according to the Detroit News. A 2010 study at the Ohio State University found that Ameriquest disproportionately targeted black neighborhoods in Minneapolis. And Deval Patrick was making $360,000 a year working for Ameriquest. Oh, he was making buku bucks! Good for you! Good for you, buddy. He joined the company's board in 2004, lending his credibility as a former civil rights attorney to both the company's operations and public image of a founder. 2 months after Deval Patrick vouched for Arnold in the Senate, Ameriquest agreed to pay $325 million to settle the predatory lending allegations in 49 states. That good man, that billionaire is a good man. He's just having to pay $320 million to settle the lawsuit. Let's keep going. Another thing that he did, it wasn't just Ameriquest where there were issues where he would join the company after having some kind of legal issue. Here's another one. In fact, there were more than one. So, under Deval Patrick's leadership in 1997, the DOJ signed a $176 million settlement with Texaco for racial discrimination against its employees. A year after the court approved the deal, he left the company, the Department of Justice, to work for a Texaco attorney. Talk about a revolving door. Talk about a revolving door. You're working to get a settlement for those companies, and then those companies are so pleased as punch with you in the settlement that you got, probably clearly a slap on the wrist, that they hire you and you work for them, and they put money in your pocket. 4 years later, he left Texaco for Coca-Cola, where he was trying to clean up the image after signing a $192 million racial discrimination settlement, the largest in history. The pattern was clear. Patrick was the guy that you hired if the company needed to look serious about fixing high-profile racism. He was an image guy. He was the guy that you bring in. You didn't have to change your stuff like talking about. You just brought in Deval Patrick. Here's another one. Let's see, right here. Patrick knew that Arnold ran a problem company from 1990 and praised him as a sincere reformer, even as his company was falling apart. Again, producing mass foreclosures that disproportionately affected minority families. The good guy in 2005 weren't trying to score ambassadorships for Ameriquest founder. They were trying to put him out of business. They were trying to put him out of business. Not Deval Patrick, though. And I'll just read this part. In corporate America, Patrick was not so much a reformer as he was a public relations figure. He gave corporations a story to tell about the good things that they were supposedly doing, even if they were simultaneously busying themselves with very bad things. By comparison, his tenure as governor of Massachusetts is pretty tame. His transgressions against progressive orthodoxy, securing $1 billion in tax breaks for subsidies for pharmaceutical and biotech companies, increasing sales tax, meaning a regressive tax, a tax that hits all of us. I mean, when you go and buy, toilet paper, you go buy sugar or whatever, you're getting hit with more, or you pay larger share of your earnings than somebody else who's, let's say, a millionaire or billionaire. It hits the bottom poor more so. It's like what's going on in France. Him putting through that tax on gas. Well, that's a regressive tax. The people who are living in a society who are at the bottom rungs of the society are getting punished while simultaneously giving tax cuts to the rich. This is the same thing here. A regressive tax that hits the poor harder with tax increase by $1 billion, overruling state regulators to clear the way for Uber. But he still got reelected. After leaving government, he accepted a job at Bain Capital, where his focus on making investments in midterm marketing companies with high social and environmental impact. The day that he got the job for Bain, Mitt Romney called him to congratulate him. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Like George Carlin said, it's a small club. I think he says a big club, but I would say it's a small club, a body of greedy human beings, and you ain't in it. And the issues of race and everything else, him being black in no way stops him from doing things that adversely affect other people who are black. In this case, he was shilling his race and identity and his message for companies that was attacking and foreclosing families that were on the lower end of the economic scale. This guy is going to run for office. And I would point out to you, be aware of hacks, stooges with stories that try to shill their identity or try to shill some kind of corporate narrative, a neoliberal narrative that you should be voting for, trying to get you to vote for. Deval Patrick, Foreclosure Mogul. Who's here this late? Nobody cares about this story. That's funny. Edward Klein, Ship Romney. Just found your channel, Jamal. Good stuff. Oh, thank you, Global. What is that? Global Dom? I love that name, Global Dom. Is that Dominique or Dominatrix? Which one? Either one works. Anthony Reyes, when you look back at this telecommunications bill by Bill Clinton, and that was the power that be wet dream. Not just the telecommunications bill. I mean, even the deregulation of Wall Street. Republicans, those a wet dream. It's a wet dream. Dax Jacobson, are you ever coming back to America? Yes, I am. It's going to be a few months, but yes. Dominatrix. Well, it says deal him. I don't know what that means. All right. Lead duck. All right, I'll end this here. Late news. I mean, it's late day. It's like 4:17 in the morning here. Weird day. I talk about it in another show because this one has gone too long already. But Deval Patrick. Oh, dear old mom. I love that. Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that just as much as Dominatrix. All right. You all have a good one. I'll see you soon. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.